of the Scottish Islands and the west of England.
Yep. Our mission, looking at what caught your interest with these, is to really pull out the most rewarding parts of those regions.
Definitely.
I mean, we were talking dramatic landscapes.
Yeah.
Really deep kind of well of heritage.
Right.
And historical moments that still resonate today.
Mm-hmm.
All explored in a way that kind of brings out the aha moments for you, but also without leaving you feeling overwhelmed.
Right. Yeah, because there's a lot to cover.
Yeah.
So let's start by charting our course. First through Scotland's islands, Iona, Skye, and Orkney.
Okay.
And then we will head south and explore the west of England, taking in the Cotswolds, Wells, Glastonbury, and those iconic stones at Stonehenge and Avebury.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, so let's unpack this, starting with that journey through the Scottish Isles that you were watching.
Okay. The first point of access, as you saw, to many of these islands is Oban. And what's fascinating about Oban, and probably struck you too, is its historical significance as the gateway to the Isles.
Right.
And really, the arrival of the train back in 1880 solidified this role, transforming it from a town primarily focused on fishing into the bustling tourism and ferry hub it is today.
Yeah, it's quite a transformation when you think about it.
Yeah.
You know, you can almost picture a time when the rhythm of life there was dictated solely by, you know, the tides and the fishing boats going out.
Mm-hmm.
And even now, even though it's a major tourist destination, it still has that connection to the sea.
Yeah.
It hasn't completely vanished.
Yeah.
So it gives it a certain authenticity, I think.
Exactly, exactly. And from that gateway, the next destination for you was Iona.
Right.
A truly remarkable little island.
It's tiny.
Yeah.
3 miles long.
3 miles long.
150 people.
Tiny community. Very few cars.
And yet, historically, it's hugely important.
Don't let its size fool you.
Yeah.
Its historical importance punches far above its weight.
It's known as the birthplace of Christianity in Scotland.
Mm-hmm.
And that all started back in 563 A.D. with the arrival of St. Columba. What's the story behind that arrival?
Well, the story goes that St. Columba, following a dispute that led to a battle in Ireland, felt such remorse that he vowed to leave his homeland.
Wow.
And never look back. And the legend goes that Iona was the first piece of land he reached, where he could no longer see the shores of Ireland.
So he had to keep going.
Yeah.
Had to get out of sight, out of mind.
Out of sight, that's right.
Yeah.
And he established a church there, and this seemingly remote location blossomed into a vital center for what we know as Celtic Christianity.
Right.
This form of Christianity with distinct Celtic traditions,
Right.
often emphasizing monastic communities,
Right.
and a closer connection to the natural world.
So it wasn't just like a religious center. It also played this important part in the intellectual life at the time.
Absolutely. During the early Middle Ages, a period often referred to as the Dark Ages, on the continent, Iona shone as a center of art and learning.
Right.
The Book of Kells.
Oh, yeah.
That breathtakingly illuminated manuscript,
Yeah.
you might have seen a copy in Dublin.
Yeah.
It was actually created there in the 8th century.
Really?
Yeah. Think of Iona as this, like, Dark Age think tank.
Right.
You know, preserving and advancing knowledge when mainland Europe was facing significant upheaval.
Wow, that's incredible.
And the Book of Kells wasn't just beautifully illustrated, it also represented a fusion of Celtic and Christian artistic traditions, a testament to Iona's intellectual dynamism.
It also became a very important burial ground for royalty.
Absolutely. Tradition holds that dozens of ancient kings, not just Scottish, but also Irish and even Scandinavian rulers, are laid to rest on Iona. So it became this revered and sacred final resting place for influential figures across the region.
That sense of peace couldn't last forever, though, could it?
Sadly, no.
Yeah. The arrival of the Vikings brought a much darker period to Iona.
It did. Around the year 800, Viking raiders began their incursions across the coastlines of Western Europe.
Right.
And Iona, being an accessible island, was a prime target.
Right.
And there was this particularly brutal event where 68 monks were massacred.
Oh, my goodness.
Right there on the beach.
Oh, wow.
And the survivors were forced to flee, taking their most precious artifacts, including the Book of Kells, back to Ireland for safety.
It's incredible to think that that happened there because it has such a sense of tranquility today. It's so peaceful.
It is. After centuries of these tumultuous events, little of the original abbey structures remain.
Right.
But maybe that very quiet you experience is part of Iona's enduring appeal. You know, a place where reflection and a sense of deep history intertwine.
Right.
If you are seeking respite a space for contemplation, it sounds like it would be the ideal destination.
Yeah. From that spiritual heartland,
Yeah.
we took a very quick boat trip to Staffa.
Oh, yeah. Completely different kind of island encounter.
Completely different.
Mm-hmm.
What's so interesting about Staffa is the bird life.
Yes.
And the volcanic rock formations.
Yes. What's so compelling about Staffa, as you saw, is this dual attraction.
Right.
First, you have the incredible abundance of bird life.
Right.
Especially those charming Atlantic puffins.
Oh, yeah.
And then those remarkable, absolutely remarkable volcanic rock formations.
Yeah.
Those distinctive six-sided basalt columns.
They're so uniform. It's almost like they were man-made.
It is amazing. These hexagonal columns formed through the slow cooling and contraction of lava, creating these incredibly regular, almost geometric shapes that do look quite artificial.
Yeah. And then there's Fingal's Cave.
Ah, Fingal's Cave. A truly awe-inspiring natural wonder. That geological darkness within the cave, combined with the echoing sound of the sea, has really captured the imaginations of romantics and geologists alike.
Yeah.
For generations. It's a potent reminder of nature's capacity for creating these dramatic and beautiful structures.
On the way to Iona, there was a brief passage through the Isle of Mull. It seemed like a landscape of untouched beauty.
Yeah.
What was your impression?
Absolutely. Pristine scenery, very sparse population. It does give you that sense of being very remote.
Yeah.
And far removed from those more densely populated parts of Britain.
Yeah. Next on our itinerary was the Isle of Skye.
Ah, yes.
Which seems to really embody that classic Scottish Highlands image.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Skye certainly lives up to that visual expectation.
Yeah.
Rugged landscapes, those narrow winding roads.
Right.
That seem to cling to the sides of these dramatic mountains.
Yeah.
And a coastline deeply indented with peninsulas and sea locks. It's truly stunning.
It's a fairly substantial island.
It is.
But with a relatively small population.
Yeah.
You know, around 13,000.
Around 13,000 residents. And it's important to remember, as your sources likely touched on, that this number is significantly lower than it once was.
Right.
And this is a direct consequence of the highland clearances. Back in the 1800s, when prioritizing sheep farming over the resident population led to forced evictions by wealthy landowners.
That's so sad.
It is a tragic chapter in Scottish history. And the clearances weren't just about economics. They fundamentally altered the social fabric and Gaelic culture of the Highlands.
Right.
A loss whose echoes can still be felt today.
Yeah. The landscape itself bears witness to that history.
It does.
You know, places like Sligodgen Bridge.
Yeah.
With those imposing Cuillin Mountains.
Yeah.
As a backdrop are just instantly recognizable.
Yeah.
And then there's that annual race up Glamag Hill. It sounds crazy.
It does.
But it's amazing how connected they are.
Oh, yeah.
To their landscape.
They do. And it is a testament to their enduring relationship with the natural environment.
Yeah.
And beyond those dramatic peaks, there are tangible reminders of human habitations stretching back thousands of years, like Dunbaig,
right?
That remarkably well-preserved Iron Age fort.
2,000 years old.
Around 2,000 years old. Imagine the community that once gathered there for defense.
Yeah.
It's a glimpse into a very different way of life than we see today.
Right. And then there's Portree, the island's largest town.
Yes, Portree, which now serves as a central hub for the tourism that likely brought you there.
Right. But it sounds like it still has a bit of its historical character, you know, with the harbor.
It does.
That once bustled with the kelp and herring fishing industries.
Exactly. While tourism is now the dominant economic driver, you can still sense that deep connection to the sea in its atmosphere.
Right.
And as you continued to explore Skye, the Trotternish Peninsula undoubtedly stood out as breathtakingly scenic.
Kilt Rock. With those volcanic lava columns.
Oh, yeah.
That look exactly like the pleats of a kilt.
Nature's architecture at its most striking.
It's incredible.
And then the quarrying.
Oh, my God.
A truly dramatic landslip escarpment.
Yeah.
Offering those unforgettable panoramic vistas that I imagine were a highlight for you.
Yeah, it's incredible scenery. It's just so vast.
It is.
And then there's those peat bogs.
Ah, yes.
And their importance to the island. You know, just a fundamental element of life there.
Absolutely. Until relatively recently, peat was an essential fuel source for heating homes and cooking meals.
Right.
The entire process of cutting it from the bog, drying it out, and then burning it, creating that distinctive smoky aroma, it was a way of life deeply intertwined with the land itself.
But you can still see all that in the Sky Museum of Island Life.
Yes.
It really captures that crofting community in the 1800s.
Absolutely.
You know, the small-scale subsistence farming, the hearth as the central point of the home, the importance of the Gaelic language, the traditional music, and the sealids.
Yeah.
It's amazing how self-sufficient these communities were.
It is.
You know, the blacksmith, the wool production, the spinning, the dyeing, the looms,
Yeah.
weaving tweed.
It's worth noting, though, that while tweed production occurs across Scotland, the most renowned tweed actually comes from the Isle of Harris.
Right.
A neighboring island with a particularly strong tradition.
Yeah. And then, of course, there's Duntum Castle.
Ah, yes.
The crumbling ruins that were once the stronghold of the MacDonald clan.
Yeah. Another tangible reminder of the powerful clans that played such a significant role in shaping the history of these islands.
So just briefly, before we headed to Orkney, we stopped at John O'Groats.
Of course.
You know, the northernmost point of the British mainland.
A classic photo opportunity for visitors.
Yeah.
Marking that geographical milestone before they board the ferry.
Right.
To the Orkney Islands.
And then you arrive in the Orkney Islands, which just seem like they have a very distinct character.
Yeah, Orkney definitely possesses its own unique identity, more remote geographically.
Right.
It boasts a fascinatingly layered history.
Yeah.
And those dramatic cliffs.
Right.
That provide a striking first impression upon arrival.
Stromness, the ferry port, has a really lovely island charm.
It does.
And the landscape is quite different to Skye, isn't it?
It is.
You know, it's mostly flat.
Predominantly flat.
And treeless.
Yeah. Largely treeless, a characteristic shaped by the often blustery weather conditions.
Right.
But despite that, or perhaps because of it, the landscape is marked by these tidy, well-maintained farms.
Right.
And with a relatively low population density and mostly single-lane roads, driving there sounds surprisingly pleasant.
Yeah.
A different pace than perhaps the more winding roads of Skye.
Yeah. Kirkwall, the main town on mainland, is quite functional. You know, it has that main street that runs from the cathedral to the harbor.
Yeah. Practical buildings. Yeah, that pedestrian main street leading from St. Magnus Cathedral down to the harbor.
And the modern economy is really tied to some pretty big industries.
Yes. The North Sea oil industry and fishing play crucial roles in Orkney's modern economy.
But they also have a very strong sense of their own identity.
Yeah, they do. Very strong sense of local Orcadian identity, quite distinct from the rest of Scotland.
Yeah.
As perhaps evidenced by the unique rhythm and style of their pipe band.
That's great. St. Magnus Cathedral has quite a history.
It does. Built in the 12th century, during a period when Orkney was under Norwegian rule.
Right.
What's truly fascinating here, and likely stood out to you, is that deep and enduring Nordic influence.
Yeah.
Orkney was a Norwegian trading hub for about 600 years.
Wow.
And that legacy is still evident today in aspects of the old Orcadian dialect.
Right.
And many of the town names, and even in local folklore.
Right.
The Romanesque design of the cathedral with its rounded arches and massive piers is another powerful reminder of that era.
So beyond Kirkwall, there are even older secrets in the Orcadian countryside.
Absolutely.
You know, places like the Stones of Stennis.
Yeah. Part of a 5,000-year-old stone circle.
Wow.
A powerful and evocative reminder of a thriving Neolithic civilization.
It's incredible. And then there's Skarabrae.
Skarabrae.
This unbelievable Neolithic subterranean village.
Yeah, it's stepping directly back into prehistory. Imagine a village from the Neolithic period.
Yeah.
With a community of around 150 people.
Right.
Living in these stone igloo-style homes.
Right.
Connected by tunnels with turf roofs and even lamps fueled by whale oil.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And Maeshowe, this 5,000-year-old chambered tomb.
Oh, yes. Remarkable, especially with the way sunlight illuminates the back chamber.
Right.
Precisely on the winter solstice.
A structure aligned with the cosmos.
Yeah. It really prompts you to consider the beliefs and sophisticated understanding of astronomy held by the people who built it.
Orkney also played a significant role in more recent history.
It did.
With Scapaflow, one of the world's largest natural harbors.
Used by Viking longships centuries ago, it became a crucial strategic base for the British Royal Navy.
Right.
During both World Wars.
Right.
The stories of the block ships deliberately sunk in World War I, and the dramatic torpedoing of a British battleship in World War II are quite compelling.
That led to Orkney becoming Fortress Orkney.
It did.
And the building of the Churchill barriers.
Yes, those causeways. Built by connecting several islands with substantial concrete blocks, are a lasting testament to that wartime effort.
Right.
And they were even visited by Winston Churchill himself.
And then there's this incredibly moving story of the Italian chapel.
Yes.
Built by Italian prisoners of war.
Yeah, built by Italian prisoners of war using whatever wartime materials they could scavenge.
It's amazing.
Transforming two simple Quonset huts into this beautiful and ornate place of worship.
Yeah.
The ingenuity and artistry they displayed.
Yeah.
Crafting light fixtures from ration tins.
Yeah.
And painting the windows.
Yeah.
Are truly extraordinary.
The painting above the altar depicting Mary and Jesus.
Yeah.
With an olive branch completed in 1944.
Yeah.
It's just such a powerful symbol of hope and humanity.
It is.
Amidst the backdrop of conflict.
It's
really quite something. So it seems clear that each of the Scottish islands that we visited, Orkney with its unique history, Iona as this spiritual heartland, Staffa with its natural wonders, and Skye with its rugged beauty, all offer a very distinct and memorable experience.
Precisely. Now, shifting our focus, let's journey south to the west of England.
Okay.
A region that, while within relatively short distance of London, presents a completely different atmosphere.
Yeah.
And set of historical and cultural attractions.
Right. It sounds like a really rich tapestry, woven from natural beauty, history, and some pretty unique cultural quirks.
Yeah.
So our first stop in this region is the Cotswolds.
Okay.
Which seems to epitomize the classic English countryside.
Yeah. Enchanting villages.
Yeah.
Nestled among gently rolling farmland.
Ah.
All interconnected by these inviting walking trails.
Right.
It really is a region best appreciated.
Yeah.
At a slower pace.
Yeah.
Perhaps on foot.
Right. It seems like that fondness for walking is very much embedded in English culture.
Is.
That tradition of enjoying these leisurely strolls through the countryside.
Yeah.
And even upholding that right to public access.
Yeah, that's right.
And those kissing gates, they're quite unique.
They are a quintessential feature of the landscape.
Yeah. So you wander through this region and you come across these idyllic spots like Lower Slaughter.
Yeah.
With its gently flowing brook, the charming cottage gardens, and that picturesque working watermill.
It really is like stepping directly into a classic English painting.
Yeah. But the beauty of the Cotswolds, it has this interesting historical basis, doesn't it?
It does. The present-day beauty is largely a byproduct of a significant economic shift.
Right.
Centuries ago.
Right. It wasn't always this tranquil agricultural landscape.
No, that's right. The medieval wool industry, fueled by the prized wool of the local Cotswold sheep, brought immense wealth and prosperity to the region.
Right.
And prosperous wool merchants invested in building those beautiful, honey-colored limestone homes.
Right.
And the grand churches,
right,
often referred to as wool cathedrals.
Yeah.
However, with the subsequent rise of the cotton industry, the wool trade declined, leaving these towns in a remarkably preserved state. Right. A kind of sleeping beauty that now thrives on tourism.
Yeah.
Perhaps the very tourism that brought your sources to the area.
So those wide high streets you see in market towns like Chippinghampton, they were originally designed to accommodate these bustling sheep markets.
That's right.
And everything is constructed from that beautiful Cotswold stone.
Down to the traditional roofs.
Yeah.
Crafted from thin slices of local stone.
Yeah.
That consistent use of materials really contributes to the area's cohesive and aesthetically pleasing character.
Yeah.
And the 17th century market hall.
Right.
That you might have seen in Chippinghampton stands as a wonderful example of that enduring craftsmanship.
The village of Stanton sounds almost too perfect with its strict building code.
It does, ensuring that timeless aesthetic is maintained.
Right. And even the village churches, they hold these fascinating layers of history.
Yeah. What's particularly intriguing is that many of these churches were likely built upon much older, possibly ancient pagan sites. Often indicated by their dedication to St. Michael.
Right.
You might even find subtle pre-Christian symbols incorporated into the church architecture.
Okay.
And those long lists of rectors displayed within the churches speak to a remarkable continuity of community and religious life over centuries.
Right.
Even those grooves you might notice on some of the stone columns could tell a story.
Yeah.
Perhaps worn away by generations of sheepdog leashes.
Really?
Yeah. During services.
Huh. Then there's Stanway House.
Yes.
The ancestral home of the Earl of Wenas.
Yeah.
And the fact that these privately owned homes, are opening to the public.
Well, the considerable costs associated with maintaining such historic estates, coupled with inheritance taxes, often necessitate opening them to visitors and the opportunity to take a personal tour. Perhaps even with the Earl himself. As your guide, offering intimate glimpses into family history. Like those preserved hair cuttings dating back to the 18th century provides a truly unique and personal connection to the past.
And that 23-foot-long shuffleboard table.
Oh, yeah, from 1625.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Like stepping directly into a scene from a historical drama.
And the chamber horse.
A sprung exercise chair from the 1750s. Imagine that being part of your daily fitness routine.
I can't even picture it.
I know. And the rebuilt gravity-fed fountain at Stanway House sounds like quite an impressive spectacle of historical engineering.
So moving on for these individual estates, there's Stow-on-the-Wold.
Ah, yes.
Which is this captivating medieval market town with its historic square.
Once the site of a major wool market, you can still see the ancient market cross. And even those narrow passageways known as fleece alleys, where sheep were herded to the market square.
Oh, wow.
And the evolution of the pubs there, including the emergence of gastropubs offering fine dining, reflects how these historic places adapt to changing times, while still retaining that essential role of the public house in English social life.
So from those gentle rolling landscapes of the Cotswolds, we go to Wells.
Oh, yes.
A city dominated by its cathedral.
A remarkably well-preserved city that exudes a strong sense of history. The bishop's palace, complete with its moat. And the perfectly preserved 14th century vicar's close. Are both exceptional examples of medieval architecture.
And Wells Cathedral has the distinction of being England's first completely Gothic church.
It does.
And its west portal is said to have the greatest collection of medieval statuary in all of Europe.
Around 300 intricately carved figures.
Wow.
Dating back to the 13th century, which would have originally been painted. In vibrant colors.
Wow. And then you have that unique scissors arch.
An ingenious structural addition. Built in the 14th century to help support the weight of the central tower.
Wow.
A testament to medieval engineering innovation in the absence of modern structural analysis.
And that ancient clock.
Oh, yeah, from 1392.
With the figures.
With its animated jousting figures.
It's amazing. And the carvings inside the cathedral that depict everyday life.
They do.
With a bit of humor.
The man with a toothache, the farmer striking a thief. They really bring those distant times to life.
It's amazing.
And experiencing evensong in that awe-inspiring space, perhaps with the added beauty of a visiting choir, must be a truly special and timeless experience.
The area around Wells is also well known for its cider production.
Absolutely. Somerset is prime apple-growing country. And visiting a place like Land's End Cider Farm. And meeting someone like Roger Wilkins with his very traditional old-school approach to cider making, simply crushing the apples, using the natural juice and the wild yeast present on the skins, with absolutely nothing else added. It's a direct link to a long-standing rural tradition, passed down through generations.
And that scrumpy, with an alcohol content around 6.8%, sounds pretty potent.
It does.
But surprisingly, he claims, doesn't leave you with a hangover.
Although perhaps wise to indulge responsibly.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
From there, we went to Glastonbury.
Oh, yes. A town steeped in a particularly long and often mystical history.
Right. A religious site since the Bronze Age, believed by some to be the birthplace of Christianity in England.
Yeah.
And linked to the legends of King Arthur.
It's amazing, that Glastonbury tour.
Yeah.
That prominent hill topped with the ruins of a church dedicated to St. Michael.
Right.
Likely a site of significance even before Christianity arrived, is seen by many as a powerful symbolic landmark.
Right.
Even associated with a mother goddess figure.
Wow.
And the deep connections to the Holy Grail.
Right.
Through the enduring legend of Joseph of Arimathea.
Right.
A tin trader said to have brought the Grail to Glastonbury add another layer of mystique.
Right. And the Chalice Well Garden.
Oh, yes.
Built around this natural spring.
Where the Holy Grail is said to lie.
Right.
Historically, a place believed to have healing properties.
Yeah.
And now a sanctuary for mind and soul wellness.
And then there's Glastonbury Abbey.
Ah, yes. With its extensive history, built on what is believed to be the site of England's very first church.
Wow.
Eventually becoming a major pilgrimage destination by the 12th century.
Right.
Its significant wealth and power eventually led to a clash with King Henry VIII and its subsequent dramatic destruction.
But Glastonbury has reinvented itself, hasn't it?
It has, with a resurgence of interest in the 18th century linked to claims of healing waters.
Right.
And its present-day reputation as a focal point for those on a spiritual quest, often with a distinctly New Age leaning.
Yeah. And finally, there's those iconic prehistoric stone circles. Stonehenge and Avebury.
These impressive stone circles scattered across Britain, dating back thousands of years, were clearly sacred centers for the people who built them. Likely used for ritual, worship, and perhaps as sophisticated celestial calendars.
Avebury is particularly interesting. Because unlike Stonehenge, you can actually walk among the stones.
Exactly. Despite the fact that a road and even a village now run through the middle of the circle, it still retains that powerful sense of wonder and direct connection to a very distant past for someone walking amongst those megaliths.
And nearby Silbury Hill, that unexplained man-made chalk mound, just adds to the mystery of it all.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, there's Stonehenge.
Arguably the most famous stone circle in the world.